Today, we're going to break down one of the sneakiest, most powerful methods of persuasion there is, the testimonial technique. It's this invisible tool that's used to shape not just what you buy, but what you actually believe, and you run into it every single day.
So, let me just start with a question for you. What could your favorite podcaster, the one talking about their own personal journey, what could they possibly have in common with an old piece of wartime propaganda? Well, the answer is the exact technique we're diving into, and it shows you just how deep this stuff really goes.
All right, let's start somewhere we all know really well, the world of everyday advice. Recommendations. This is where the testimonial technique loves to hide out, right in plain sight, using the trust we just naturally put in other people. I mean, think about it. Before you book a trip or buy pretty much anything online or even pick a place to eat, what do? You check the reviews, right? We're just wired to trust what other people are saying, especially when a lot of them are saying the same thing. And that gut feeling, that reliance on social proof, that's the engine of the testimonial.
Okay, but here's the real kicker. Those simple, trusted things, the reviews, the recommendations from friends, they're actually the building blocks of a formal propaganda method that was identified decades ago. Yep, the testimonial technique isn't just about marketing. It's a serious tool for influencing our deepest beliefs, and it works on a massive scale.
So, how does this thing actually work? What's the secret sauce? Well, the absolute genius of the technique is that it gets to skip all the hard work. It doesn't need logical arguments or data because it taps into something way more powerful, our need to connect with people.
Think about a really popular podcast host, for instance. When they share their own story, maybe a journey of doubt or a new discovery they've made, they're not laying out a formal argument. No, what they're doing is inviting you to come along for the ride, to think with them. And because you like them, because you trust them, their personal story starts to feel like evidence itself. And that is the absolute key. You're not being convinced by a list of facts and figures. You're being convinced because you identify with the person speaking. Their credibility sort of rubs off on the idea itself. It's a brilliant emotional shortcut. Now, we got to be clear. This is very different from a direct endorsement. An endorsement is obvious, right? It's, hey, buy this product, it's great. A testimonial, that's way more subtle. It's conversational. It's just someone saying, this worked for me. They're not telling you what to do. They're just planting a seed and letting you connect the dots. You think, well, if it was good for this person I admire, maybe it'll be good for me too.
So, while this can definitely happen naturally, a lot of the time, it is carefully, meticulously engineered. Let's look at a real-world example from someone whose job it was to create these exact kinds of stories.
Okay, so here's the story you might see in a magazine. It's this really inspiring, feel-good piece about a regular guy, Dave from Doncaster. He gets a hair transplant and boom, his whole life changes. Suddenly, he's got more confidence, he gets a new girlfriend, a better job. It feels totally authentic, right? A story of triumph.
But that's the story they want you to hear. Here's what was really going on behind the curtain. The ex-propagandist who wrote it said flat out, we weren't really selling a product. He said, we were selling an insecurity, tapping into what men might be feeling, and then just gently placing the solution right there in front of them with Dave's story. It's pure persuasion without ever feeling like a sales pitch.
So why are we such suckers for this? I mean, even when we feel like we know better, why does a personal story hit us so much harder than a page full of data? Well, the answer is all about a few predictable little shortcuts our brains just love to take.
See, this technique basically plays our own cognitive biases against us, and it's super effective. First, you've got authority bias. We just automatically trust someone with a title like doctor or expert. Then there's social proof. We want to do what the people we admire are doing. There's also identity signaling. We make choices that align with our tribe, the people we see as being like us. And maybe the biggest one of all, cognitive ease. It is just so much easier to trust a friendly face than to do the hard work of evaluating all the evidence yourself.
And in our world today, this whole thing is on steroids. Think about it. Online reviews. People like you also bought this. A recommendation from one stranger? Easy to brush off. But a recommendation from 10,000 strangers? All of a sudden, that starts to feel like a consensus. It feels like the truth.
So if you boil it all down, the technique works because it lets you skip the hard part, thinking. It doesn't ask you to analyze or debate or weigh pros and cons. It just asks you to recognize something, a face you trust, an authority figure you respect, a crowd you want to be a part of, and then it lets your brain's shortcuts do all the rest.
And this is where things get really, really serious.
Because this isn't just about selling watches or supplements. This exact same technique is used to shape our entire view of the world, our politics, our ideologies, our basic beliefs about what's true and what isn't.
You hear this constantly in the political arena. A politician will say something like, "Top doctors agree," or "the best legal minds have said," to give their idea a stamp of authority. It's a classic testimonial. It gives you the feeling of expert consensus, but without any actual proof you can check.
And get this, here's a really counterintuitive way it's used. Sometimes, the very act of being silenced or deplatformed is turned into a testimonial. The narrative becomes, wow, this person must be saying something really important, something true, if these powerful forces are trying to shut them up. Their censorship becomes its own bizarre kind of evidence.
So we'll leave you with this, a question to keep in your back pocket. The next time you find yourself listening to someone you really like and admire and you're just nodding along, just pause for a second and ask yourself, am I agreeing with the actual idea here, or am I just agreeing with the person saying it? Knowing the difference, that's the first step to really thinking for yourself.